Hello everybody and welcome. Welcome to Sunday, which of course if you're not live it won't necessarily be Sunday. Do say hello if you're in the chat. It looks like I've got 3 people with me. If you are new to my channel, there will be a pre-tour chat lasting about 15 minutes and therefore if you aren't wishing to watch that, you can scroll forward 15 minutes and you'll be at the start of the tour. Hello Anne, how are you? Hello Rosemary, how are you? Been an interesting day already. Been a very wet day. Last night there was a helicopter going round and round, and I did Google to see whether or not I could find there was an escaped attacker, but I couldn't find anything. So, but yes, so I didn't go to sleep straight away, and then of course the unsettled evening. Hello Fran. Fran's happy that it's Sunday, but that means that tomorrow is Monday. I am super glad, Fran. Super glad that you can do your days of the week still. We're rocking this. Hello Mitzi. Hello Margaret. Yes, indeed. Monday and the emails. Don't work on Fridays, so when I get back on a Monday, tend to have a lot of emails. It's very wet and windy, isn't it, Rosemary? Not very pleasant, but on the positive side, it looks like we might, I think tomorrow's still looking a bit grim. Hello, Michaela, and possibly Tuesday or whatever. But anyway, there seem to be a few days of sunniness, so that's wonderful. Hello, Sue, because I do like a bit of sun, but I am also aware that it says to me it's going to be sunny, and it's a big fat lie. Mind you, also it may say to me that it's rainy, and it's a big fat lie. I thought I'd put on a bit of lippy tonight, and it's quite funny because when I first put it on, I thought to myself, that looks remarkably like the lipstick I might have used when I was a witch. It was very dark, so I put a second lighter one on. So yes, I do feel like I've got my eye bags and my lipstick. Ta-da! 80 degrees. Wow. Where are you, Mitzi? That's slightly warm, isn't it? 80 degrees. I put the heating on. I thought I'd treat myself. It's currently showing as 16.5 degrees centigrade. Tomorrow is Monday. Well, it wasn't me. Don't blame me. I think it was Fran. But yesterday was Saturday. So, you know, does that make it feel any better? And in a week's time, it'll be Sunday again. Near Chicago. Oh, interesting. I thought Chicago was would have been quite kind of more wintry by now. Used to watch ER, which was set in Chicago. Very exciting week I've got though, guys. Obviously Casey's down. She's off in Belfast at the moment. And yeah, on Thursday we're going down to Rye and we're staying over in Dr. Sin's bedchamber. So we've got the Ghosts of Rye tour, and then we're going to have a little live stream from the hotel room. It sounds a bit saucy. I don't mean it like that. It's just because it's a very exciting bedroom. Not anymore, Mitzi. Oh, really? Is it still windy? Chicago's known for being windy, isn't it? I suppose with climate change, unfortunately, nothing is guaranteed. Oh, very cold in winter. Oof. Well, of course, and I think it was Leslie, who isn't on yet, but Leslie shared a delightful post about the fact that the clocks go back at the end of the month, which, of course, is marvellous. How cheery. So you could probably hear that I'm not 100% on the old voice, but a lot better than I was. Just a pesky cold. My brother managed to pick up COVID again, so that's doing the rounds, as we know, but I was fortunate not to have come down with the old vid, and kind of have sandwiched it in between meeting up with the Bramwells and Casey. So hopefully I will be tip-top banana by the time Thursday rocks around. So yes, it's very windy still in Chicago. Yes, it was almost tropical on Friday. I was sat out on the decking in glorious sunshine. Emma, you're not late. You've arrived in the pre-tour chat. So you don't need to sit on the naughty step. Yes, countdown to the shortest day, December the 21st. Although that's still quite a while away, isn't it, really? That's still 2 months away. And then it gets better. Hopefully we'll have some chaps in our menopause chat. I do know that obviously... what was I going to say? I do know that obviously men might not go through the menopause themselves, but I'm sure they know lots of women who are. I think Stefan put a tour up that was clashed with this one, so we might have some people not able to make it if they are in Amsterdam. No, you're not late, Emma. You're very well on time. I've left my phone case on the side, and I must admit I need to move it because I keep thinking to myself that firstly I was going to pick it up and make sure it was on silent. It's the phone case, not the phone, and I've just seen it again and have another phone related thought. So that's a little bit ridiculous. So we're 7 minutes in, which by my calculation means we've got a whole 8 minutes. No, 7:30, Emma. Have I put it wrong in the calendar? I don't know, but I don't think so. I try and schedule my tours around other guides, and I think I was in a bit of an Anna sandwich. I always panic when somebody tells me that the tour was a different time. So so we have another 7.5 minutes to go. So apart from the weather, I hope everybody's enjoyed their Sunday. Well, I got up late, and then I went into Sainsbury's, and then I had an ocular migraine. And that was fun. Started at the checkouts. Hello, Wendy, David and Daisy. And started having the eye flashes. So the zigzaggy. At first I was like, is that something? And then I'm like trying to work out. And of course I was buying some plastic storage because I'd seen them on offer. And I phoned up my sister and everything went wrong. I said, Lorna, are you interested? And I tried her on Messenger. The camera didn't work. So then I tried her on WhatsApp, and I'm trying... Well, I can't really see how large it is, so I'm putting my hand in front of it. So that probably is what set me off, to be honest. And, of course, they didn't weigh properly. And that was without the lid. So by the time I'd got through about 8, they hadn't tallied up properly. So I got the lady across. The lady! And she said, well, you haven't put the right numbers in. Well, I know, and that's without the lids, but it's not me, thank you very much. It's your silly system. And then, of course, I've noticed I've got these flashing, and I was like, okay, then let's go back to the car and let's just sit in the car because I don't think I should be driving while I've got these little zigzag flashes. But fortunately, didn't last too long. I actually sat there and I thought, somebody said something about caffeine may help. When I say somebody, I looked on Google. And I thought, I wonder if a Bounty will help, because I've just bought a Bounty, which for those who aren't in the know, it's basically a chocolate bar with coconut filling. Very nice. And that, whether or not it would have gone away anyway, but it did tend to go away, so that was splendid. And then I went to Aldi because, quite frankly, I can't have enough supermarket excitement in my life. Oh! It's a nice little yawn. So did you all join from the calendar, or did you join from the YouTube notification? Don't all speak at once. I think ordering photo prints online would... I have thousands and thousands of photos, so I would have no idea, hi Dawn, which ones to print. You know, I have thought about it before doing a photo book, and it's just too much. Too much for my poor little brain. You had one last Sunday, sometimes get the visual. Oh yeah, I didn't actually have the headache. I woke up this morning with a sore eye. So I don't know. That's interesting, a mix. We've got calendar, YouTube, my little event that I did on the Facebook Do Free. That's interesting. Good, good. Glad they're all working. Sometimes I wonder which ones are the best ones to use. Now, where's Leslie and Linda? Because I saw a comment from them both about my tour, and I don't think I've seen either of those young ladies. Oh, bless you, Rosemary. Yeah, the calendar you can use on the web version, I think, but don't start me now because it'll get too confusing. If I've missed saying hello to anybody, apologies. Hi, Dawn. I like that, Wendy. It's like you're saying it with an accent. What was it I spelt wrong? Ah, I know. I was on a Facebook page and somebody wrote Gingers Crossed in response to somebody. And I was like, I'm so pleased to see that, because the number of times my phone tries to change fingers crossed to Gingers Crossed. And I replied and I said, here's a ginger and he's got everything crossed. And she said, I match your ginger and I raise you a tuxedo. And I said, I match your tuxedo and I raise you another ginger. She stopped there. I was a bit sad because I thought I could have gone, she could have gone a bit further with it. I could have kept raising until I got to number 6. Oh, Wendy, I can't speak. I can't type. In fact, who knows? What am I doing here? But yes, Gingers Crossed is a bit of a known one for me, and there's another one. It's really annoying that it keeps trying to do. Oh, that was it. I said love tours. I do love tours. No, I don't do love tours, do I? Why is it trying to change it? I'll write live and it'll change it to love. Perhaps it's trying to suggest a new career path for me, some sort of setting people up. Romance. Come and meet. I could do maybe instead of speed dating, it could be speed touring. So you could join for a 40-minute tour and you could meet lots of other single people. And I could call them love tours. I quite like that idea. It'll never happen, but never say never, actually. There would be a lot of advertising for a love tour. It's not like the Love Boat. Oh, I've got the yawns. I do apologise. That's one of the symptoms I'll be talking about later. I need to get my adrenaline. That's what I need. I need to get my adrenaline up. Quick, Sean. Do 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 do. You always type Mitlon Keynes. Yeah, and why would it do that? I mean, Milton's a proper word. It's a name. I'm just wondering why Margaret's written 7. Ah, Linda's here. Linda's here. Fine, Linda. Did you have your ears burning? I had a friend who was autocorrect changing duck to something else. Yes, indeed. Well, you don't want to do that. So we got about a minute left. A minute left by my calculations. Let me doubly check. Oh, yes, 1 minute to go. So, spell checker is evil. It's made me embarrassed a few times, like when I typed nice to see Susanna baking again. It did change baking to naked. Oh, interesting. Nice to see you naked again. I always find them really amusing. Even my own spellers. 7:30, Margaret. Thank you. I'm on the nose. On the nose. Right then, so welcome everybody to what is going to be a little bit of a chat about the menopause, which is going to involve me talking. Obviously, who else is going to be talking? Stupid Leonie. And I'm going to be sharing some facts and some interesting points. And hopefully you're all going to be jumping in with your own questions, not questions, don't ask me questions, own points, stories. What I would say from the very outset, I am not a doctor. I am not Dr. Kent, or I am neither medically trained. This is purely what I've found out from my own research and from what I have garnered from friends, family, and my own experiences. If at any stage you need help and support, please do contact a medical professional. So, what comes before the menopause? We are born as women. And now what I find really interesting actually is that you are actually born with you're born with all your eggs in one basket. There's an estimate, I can't see that anybody's counted, that there's around 2 million at birth. By the time you reach puberty, there's about 400,000 left. So we're certainly talking hundreds and thousands of eggs. Now, the NHS, so that for those who aren't British, it's the National Health Service. They say periods can start between age 8 and 17. I was 14, so I think actually I was quite late starter. Went on a family holiday to Scotland, stayed in a remote cottage, and my mother had cooked us chicken pies. I still can't eat chicken pies, and I got food poisoning. And let's just say that although I did actually start my period on that holiday, I actually thought I'd done something else. I thought I'd actually got food poisoning, and it was all very interesting. It was a fabulous holiday. Also remember falling down a bog with one foot. So it was a lot of drama. I very much, it's a big thing for a girl to start your period. You're like, I'm a woman now. I mean, you're not really, but you've started your period. Now, each ovary has thousands of ovarian follicles, which are small sacs which hold immature eggs. Between day 6 and 14 of your menstrual cycle, the follicle stimulating hormone causes follicles in one of the ovaries to mature. Now, the ovaries, as well as producing eggs, produce reproductive hormones, estrogen, progesterone, and androgens. Now, so, okay, fine, we've started our period, and I think there was, when I was growing up, lots of talk around that. When I say lots of talk, that's a big fat lie. There was stuff to read. You didn't really talk about it, but you read stuff. It was in school, it was in sex education. They never spoke about the bit when your periods stop. And that really is an area that I think there's still a lot of a lack of knowledge. There's still a bit of a stigma. You don't talk about it in the same way that you wouldn't go running around school saying I started my period. You know, people keep these things to themselves, and that sharing of information isn't necessarily there. Now, at the time of your menopause, virtually no eggs remain. So hundreds of eggs begin to mature. Most often only one egg will become dominant during each menstrual cycle and reach its fully mature state capable of ovulation and fertilization. The remaining eggs wither and die. So from starting your period to actually running out of your eggs, you've gone through a large number of eggs. And obviously, as you get older, therefore, the chances of becoming pregnant are perhaps more reduced because you've got less eggs. Now, you're then starting to come into your 4 stages. of menopause. So your premenopause, which is what I'm speaking about at the moment, is when you're having periods, having children, if you so wish. Then you get to the second stage, which is perimenopause. You have your menopause and your postmenopause. Now, the perimenopause means around menopause. It's when your body is making the transition towards menopause and its menstrual irregularity. Now, the level of estrogen, so the main female hormone, rises and falls unevenly, which causes obviously quite a few issues. So I'm going to talk more about symptoms later when we have a chat, but you can have hot flashes or hot flushes and sleep problems. You can have mood changes. You can have problems with your bladder and your vuvu. This is a family show. Low estrogen can make you more vulnerable to urinary or vuvu problems. Loss of tissue tone could lead to urinary incontinence, which is rather lovely. Your fertility decreases, change in your sexual function, and this is one of the big things as well that you're probably aware of. You get a loss of bone. So with estrogen levels declining, you start to lose bone more quickly than you replace it. And that is the risk of osteoporosis, the disease that causes fragile bones. Now, you also get changing cholesterol levels, an increase in bad cholesterol, which contributes to an increased risk of heart disease, and a decrease in good cholesterol as women age, which also increases the risk of heart disease. Well, isn't this cheery? So in perimenopause, the production of estrogen and progesterone rise and fall. Now, you could start earlier on your perimenopausal menopausal journey. If you smoke, that's about, I think, 1 to 2 years earlier. Your family history, that links into it. Whether you've had cancer treatment, whether you've had a hysterectomy, which leaves your ovaries, or obviously if you have a hysterectomy and remove your ovaries, you go into what is called surgical menopause. Now, before the age of 40, they call it premature menopause. 40 to 45 is early menopause, and that's about 5% of women. Perimenopause can last about 4 years on average, it says, but it can last up to 8 or 10 years. This whole process can last for ages. Now, the menopause is actually the end of a woman's reproductive years. So you reach menopause when you've not had a period for 12 months. And the average age apparently is 51 to 52. But this is all kind of blowing my mind, because I thought menopause was the thing with all the symptoms, but actually has perimenopause. So I'm saying I'm menopausal. I'm thinking, well, actually, I think I've gone through the perimenopause, potentially, and I didn't realise. And I spoke to my GP. Before I go there, so post-menopause, we lose muscle faster and tend to gain more fat. So I spoke to my GP earlier this year because I was waking up in the middle of the night. I'd go into the bathroom and I'd have a really bright red face. Just when I say right, it would be this cheek. I was like, that's a bit strange. And I thought to myself, well, perhaps it's because I'm putting deep heat on my shoulder, which I had frozen shoulder. And I phoned up my GP and they said, it sounds like, you know, when did you have last period? All this, it sounds like you're menopausal. I said, but why in only one cheek? And then about 3 months later, I was like, well, this is exciting. The other cheek's caught up. And suddenly having hot flushes. And I'll be honest, my state is of confusion more than anything else, because there's so much differing information on the internet. You can go down so many rabbit holes. If you speak to your GP, you get a very short consultation. And generally it's not about talking it in depth. It's actually about trying to fix a problem. So please do share your stories later, because I can see there's some going through and I'm going to miss them. So if you have put something in the chat, please do share it later. So my kind of case that I'm now is I've only just started the hot flushes, which I thought would be the main symptom of the menopause. I kind of thought I'll know when I've hit menopause, but actually menopause isn't then, it's perimenopause. So okay, that's confusion. I'm now not sure where I am in the cycle. And what they used to do is they used to do a test to find out. If you're younger, they'll do a test to find out that you're actually what your hormones are like. But they don't do that anymore, because my age, they just assume, yes, I'm 51. I'm that ideal time. So to complicate matters even more, and we can talk about this later, I've got a coil. So that gives the synthetic version of progesterone. So I'm not even displaying the behaviour that I would be without that. So that in itself is interesting. So you're like, okay then, so I could go on my mother. So you could look at, when does your mother? My mother had to have a hysterectomy, so she has no idea. My nana's dead. So again, it's kind of, who are we talking to about this? And some of the, interestingly enough, so if we think to ourselves, well, actually there is information now on the television, on websites. Think about back in the day. So this is quite scary. I'm going to give you a very brief historical overview to the menopause. So in 384 to 322 BC, which is ancient Greece, Aristotle first described the menopause. They felt that periods detoxified women's blood of poisons. Ending of periods led to an accumulation of those toxics from retained menstrual bleed. And at this time, Aristotle referred to the menopause age of being 40. Now, if you think back, I don't mean that at all, think back to that, you weren't around, at least 50% of women died by 34. So the point that we don't have so much information about it is because actually in those days, you wouldn't necessarily have been having the menopause as a wide topic, because people weren't living that long. Now, it wasn't until 1821 a French physician, Charles Négrier, probably pronounced that wrong, used the term menopause. Now, back in the 1560s, if you remember the witch trials, now a witness said most of those accused were pathetic, melancholic, hallucinating old women whose age and sex made them prey to diabolical fancies. Now, most victims of witch hunts were over 50. Their bodies, their facial hair, fragile bones, wrinkled skin and thinning hair. Reaching 50 in those days was actually fairly rare. So think about all those people. They're unusual. And think about how they were accused of being witches. Now, the Victorian attitude, it's no better. Physicians believed there was a link between the womb and the brain, making all women susceptible to insanity. So women in menopause were climacteric insanity. So they'd lock them up or remove their ovaries. And this operation was seen as necessary to cure mental disorders, including nymphomania and hysteria. So taking that all into account, you look back and you think to yourself, women really have struggled over the years with complete lack of knowledge about what we're going through, from being seen as obviously redundant, because we're no longer, back in the early years, obviously being fertile was a really good thing. That's what you wanted. So now you're no longer fertile, you know, your value. And then, of course, in ancient Greece, we're getting rid of our toxins. The Victorians putting women through operations. I often think, if you think about some of the romantic novels from a certain era, and you'd always have that neurotic woman of a certain age. You might have women taken to their bed. And actually think to yourself, that's really interesting. How much of that was all linked to something that now we're starting to talk about. So I'm going to talk about some of the symptoms and then I'm going to hand over to you. So this is just a list of some of the symptoms for the menopause. Hot flushes and night sweats. Sleep disturbances, possibly because of those night sweats or just because of insomnia. Poor concentration, confusion and brain fog. Fatigue, anxiety and panic attacks. The impact to confidence. I've seen quite a few people in documentaries saying, I didn't feel like me. Irritability and mood swings. Stiff and achy joints. Weight gain, especially around the belly. The change in your body shape. Dry, itchy skin and other skin changes. Palpitations. Headaches and migraines, heavy, irregular periods, a lower sex drive, recurrent urinary tract infections, sensitive teeth, painful gums or other mouth problems, bloating, thinning hair and brittle nails. Now, when I read that list out, how many of you could identify with those symptoms on that list? Because a lot of things happen, I think, and you don't take much notice of them. And then when you add them all in together, you're actually seeing a pattern. And there's over 30 symptoms linked to the menopause. And I was speaking to somebody earlier today. She's an elderly neighbour. And I said, what happened, you know, when you went through the menopause? Was there anybody to speak to? No, didn't talk about it. So actually, let's start talking about it. This is the most important thing, because actually, how many of those really impact our self-esteem, impact the way we feel about ourselves and about life in general? So your anxiety and your panic attacks, your impact to your confidence, your irritability, your mood swings, depression, which I missed off. And unfortunately, I have a friend who had a fairly early menopause, and when she went to the doctor about her anxiety, she'd never had anxiety, a very confident person. Suddenly she had this crippling anxiety, and he wanted to prescribe her anti-anxiety meds, which she went on. And then she did some reading and she was like, actually, can you test me? And because she was younger, they did some testing. And found out she's, yeah, you're in an early menopause. So don't treat with just anti-anxiety medication, because that's not really targeting the core issue, which is you're going through the menopause. Margaret, you were lucky you got no symptoms whatsoever. And I think that's really, the point is, no one person will experience the same menopause. I will not experience the same menopause as my sister because of different factors. Obviously, you know, diet, lifestyle, weight, stress levels. And the other thing is, how do we know what we can attribute to the menopause? I have a history of vitamin D deficiency, which means that I lose my hair. Not all of it, obviously, but I have thinning hair. I've never had loads. Actually, how do I know what's menopause? What's my vitamin D? Well, how do I know which? Well, actually, let's make sure I've got enough vitamin D, and that way it's counteracting it. So Michaela's period stopped at 49, and that was it. No more symptoms, only hair loss. brilliant. And some women will sail through and some women will really struggle. And this is a really scary statistic. In the US, suicide rate in women is highest among the ages of 45 to 64. In the UK in 2022, it was 50 to 54, and in 2021 it was 45 to 49. Those statistics and those ages, to me, are showing there's a link, but the research hasn't been done, or the research potentially is being done, but only now. So we haven't. Have we got the investment? Linda had warm moments rather than hot flashes, and Dawn's still having a terrible time with the menopause. And this is it. We're all different. Do you feel that you had the support that you needed when you were going through the menopause? And first off, let's talk about medically. So for those of you that actually did need support, did you feel that medically you could get that? And I know the system's slightly different in America, obviously Canada, the UK, Europe. In the UK, would contact a GP. You can go to clinics. Oh, hold on, it's very light. Right, let's see if I can. So Sharon says, I started perimenopause at age 40 and had a very rough time. My doctor kept saying it wasn't menopause because I was too young. How often do we hear that? You can't be going through the menopause, you're too young. Outstanding. That they wouldn't think that people go through the menopause at that age. Robin, I think because I knew what was happening to me when I went through menopause, I just accepted it and worked through it. And that's great, but not everybody can work through it because the impacts can be so debilitating. There's actually an increase in women leaving work because they can't cope potentially with the impacts of the menopause and still going to work. Dawn says no support from the GP. Sue says no. And I think it's a bit, I think Davina McCall called it a postcode lottery on the support that you get. Linda, that is such a fabulous point. I think in hindsight, I understand my mother better from some moments that she sees. Now, yes, because if you think about it, we're going through it, but our families, our friends, our colleagues, they're also going to be impacted. If we're having these irritability and mood swings, absolutely. And I found that in the perimenopause, I had a lot of, I found completely mood swings. 1 minute I'd be fine, the next minute absolutely no. And that impacts when you're, with family and you're being your genuine self with them, and they're having to put up with that. There was a program I watched, so Panorama did a recent program on the treatment given to people in the menopause. And one of the ladies was saying or one of the reports was, she had to move out of her house because of the row she was having with her husband was so bad. And you can tell yourself as much as you like to be calm, not to get wound up. And I was in Sainsbury's earlier today and contacted my sister, show these plastic boxes, and the video didn't work. And I could feel myself getting really wound up. I can't chill. So Rosemary says, she started her periods age 10 and menopause at 42. I went to GP age 40 because of family history of postmenopause, rheumatoid arthritis. They checked your hormones and they were okay. Interesting. And actually, what's interesting is there isn't necessarily a correlation between how early you start your periods and when you start the menopause. It can be if you haven't had children, so that could be slightly earlier, I read. but not necessarily. So you've got all your family history and your impacts, but actually Fran's saying she was very lucky. She had symptoms through peri and menopause, but they weren't severe. You post and still have hot flashes. Well, that's the great news. I thought, oh, come the menopause, they'll stop. But goodness gracious me, no, you can have hot flashes for years and years post-menopause. So, sorry, I need to scroll up. Wendy's saying male prostate cancer treatment also causes menopausal symptoms in men, hot flushes, etc. Yeah, it's all about the hormones, isn't it? Oh, you're so hormonal. Well, actually, yeah, there's not much I can do about that. She told you what to look for and get a book and come back when I notice symptoms. That's very young, isn't it? And of course, people now, they're putting off having children later and later. So if you, I mean, Dawn's starter period's at 10 and the menopause at 50. So yeah, it doesn't start much earlier. The last years of junior school when started the periods. Yeah, I mean, I just think, gosh, that's so young now. Your first period, Andrew's first period was at 12 when he started transitioning to male at 19, but last summer had awful bleeding. I experienced hot flushes and all those symptoms. And obviously as a trans, that is actually must be even harder for you, getting the support and acknowledgement. And that is something that's actually spoken about. Because you might not want to be open about that. You might not want to tell people. Why do you want to tell people, those intimate details? But actually it may also help sharing that information. Linda's finding it annoying that the hot flashes never happened when she was cold and needed that warmth in the winter. I think the thing is, Linda, I have joked myself that maybe I'm saving money on the heating, but it's only from about here. So I'm not sure it's going to dramatically reduce my bill. I'm also fortunate in the fact that although some of them may be quite short-lived, some are longer, but they're annoying rather than disastrous. So you're feeling your face is burning. I find one of my triggers is when I get in bed. So it might be suddenly, lying down. It might be that, lying in the warm duvet. That tends to be when I'll get in and I'll suddenly go ding, which could be a bit of a passion killer. I mean, it isn't, because obviously it's not relevant. Rosemary says, unfortunately for me, my menopausal symptoms were blamed for problems I was having urinary rise. So a diagnosis was missed until it became an emergency. Yes, how many? How many people get misdiagnosed or kind of just not getting kind of the kind of treatment maybe. But the other thing to remember is, give or take, there's 50% of the population that are female or born female. So many people. How can, obviously we're not all going through the menopause at the same time, but actually that's a lot for the NHS suddenly, or for any health institution to suddenly cope with. I mean, I know some people have hot flushes from here. I know some people are dripping with sweat. I know you can get the night sweats. Now, funnily enough, I got those in my 20s and 30s. I would, wake up and I would be cold, drenched in sweat. It's disgusting, really, because you'd feel absolutely grim. So actually, for me, this kind of hot flush. But now I'm looking at everything else. I'm thinking, well, that's interesting. Sleep disturbances. Yeah, that's the thing at the moment. How can I tell? Because I've got a frozen shoulder and I used to sleep on my front. My other shoulder's gone. It's not frozen, but because I was doing everything else on that one, that's now really painful. So is it the menopause or the perimenopause that's causing my sleep issues? Or is it the fact that I'm just not getting a comfortable night's sleep because it's so tricky? So migraines, interesting. Yeah, I mean, there's stuff, obviously, you know what you don't get when you've had the menopause. You don't get your period pains. Well, that's good. If you've really struggled with debilitating period pains, that's a plus. But the whole aging process, for me, I think almost mentally, it's kind of acknowledgement that you're getting into the next stage of your life. So I was like, I never wanted children. But actually, you can't have children now. That's never going to happen. And you're now a menopausal woman. And I think because there is that stigma, it was kind of like, oh, how do I feel about that? I'm getting older. Does that mean I'm going to look older? This aging process. And I know that one of the things that I was confused about, I actually thought when I was a lot younger, that if you're on HRT, it stopped the menopause. I didn't realise it alleviated the symptoms. I thought I could take the menopause and I'd stop all that aging process. So it was a bit like, oh, so I'm going to age anyway. That's annoying. Preferred the idea of delaying it. I could delay it for 10 years. Oh, I can't delay it for 10 years. It's going to happen. I can just decide to. And where's the balance? So did any of you guys decide I'm going for HRT? And actually, before we talk about that, let's talk a little bit about treatments. Andrew, so that's a dilemma. You want to get a hysterectomy done, but they said I could keep my eggs. I'm not sure if I want to go through that procedure or not. I was speaking to somebody today that was talking about they had a hysterectomy, and this must have been about 50 years ago. And she was literally, you know, cut from there to there, a massive impact operation. Now it's obviously a lot easier, but it's still actually quite invasive. So do you want to be going through all that if you don't have to? The menopause and musical, no, but I'll tell you what was good that I sent to my sister was hold on, let me get this right. Queen's Bohemian Rhapsody, but done as the menopause, and that was quite funny. And I was like, oh yeah, you know, so it'd be like, la 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 la, itchy skin, memory loss. Anyway, so no, I haven't seen it, but that sounds quite fun. Rosemary says, never got hot flushes, memory problems, mood swings and light switch moments. 1 minute, 1 minute fine, then the light switch turned off and fatigue hit big time. Hard at work, yeah. The brain fog I find quite, it's difficult when you, for me, you know, you'll be like, no idea what I'm talking about. I mean, I'm not sure I didn't do that before. I might just be blaming it on the menopause now, just for, you know, because I can. Yes, the Queen parody, it was very funny. But actually just, you know, I don't want to have to say to colleagues, I'm sorry, I'm being a little bit more stupid today because I've got the menopause. What? No, I still want to be fabulous. I still want to be high functioning. So it's about giving yourself the support, the time, and not beating yourself up for something that isn't within your control. So Robin said she stopped her periods at 48 and never had hot flashes until recently, and now I'm 74. Well, I would say, Robin, if you're starting to get them now, speak to your GP, because absolutely it could be, you know, it could be something else. Hot flashes, who knows? But yeah, unfortunately could go on for years. Oh, marvellous. You know, it's not quite hot enough to, you know, do a boiled egg, fried egg, Wouldn't boil an egg, would you, on your face? So treatments. Now, HRT, so I've referred to it a few times. Now, interestingly enough, although the first HRT drugs date back to 1942, which is a lot earlier than I thought, it didn't start becoming widely used until the 1960s. So in the 1940s, and this sounds delightful, conjugated equine estrogen, so basically came from horses, called Premarin. And an advert from the 1950s advised men that they would make a woman pleasant to live with once again. Can you imagine? Nowadays, an advert, make a woman pleasant to live with once again. Now, in 1975, evidence came out that without another hormone, progestogen, it would lead to a higher risk of endometrial cancer. Sales absolutely nosedived, as you can imagine, until it was found that by adding progestogen mitigated the risk. So estrogen on its own can thicken the lining of your womb, which has an increased risk of womb cancer. Now, if you're using progestogen, that prevents the lining from thickening. Can you repeat that comment, Rosemary, at some point when I finish, because I can't read it at the moment and I wanted to read that. So in the 1990s, there was a big study. So by now people are having, you know, this, it's a big thing, this HRT. So the big study was started in the 1990s. And in 2002, the first results reported that HRT had more detrimental than beneficial effects. They stopped the study. However, the study was not around the benefits of HRT on the women that would typically be using it, and the reporting didn't really give all the full facts. However, 80% of women stopped taking HRT. Doctors refused to prescribe it. Government guidelines were issued. The benefits of HRT usually outweigh the risks, depending on your age, symptoms, family history for health, etc. But we're still dealing with the legacy of that report from that was started in the 1990s, and that still impacts the way that HRT is viewed. Now, you can get the choice of pills, both estrogen only or combined. You can have an estrogen gel, an estrogen spray, or you can have patches, again, estrogen only or combined. Now, the Mirena coil, which is placed in the womb, gradually releases a form of progestogen, and that can be in place for up to 5 years. So where you've got the Mirena coil, you only need your estrogen top up. Now, progesterone is the hormone made by the ovaries, and progestogens are synthetic hormone drugs. So I have spent a long time debating HRT because I've still got, remember, because my mum was on HRT, and I remember the news articles coming out and going, Mum, what, you know, are you at risk? She was like, it's a different kind of HRT, and this is, but you've still got that in the back of your head. And I think it also is the tipping point. How bad are you? And therefore your assessment of benefit and risk. And at the moment, while I can't attribute so many things that are going on directly to the menopause, do I want to take that slight risk? Let me see if I can scroll up and see Rosemary's. So Rosemary said she was offered HRT because of early age and high risk of osteoporosis, and decreased hormones were causing migraines. Then HRT had to be stopped because it contradicted with her misdiagnosed illness. Yeah, and Robin's saying she was allergic to HRT. So not everybody can take HRT anyway. So you could go through all that thought process and then go, well, actually, maybe I shouldn't be taking it anyway. So has anybody actually taken HRT and found that it worked for them? Now, obviously, the taking tablets, some people don't like, so they might prefer a gel or a spray or the patches. But the patches in themselves, they can, you know, cause a bit of irritation sometimes. You can forget to change them. I mean, obviously, forget to take a tablet, to take your spray or your gel. With the gel, I always think, how do you know how much? At least with the spray, 3 pumps, I know what that is. But with the gel, how much is a, you know, they say 50p. I've never got my head around that. A bit like your hair conditioner. 50p size? I'll just go splodge. That'll work. So at least, you know, and I don't get this whole thing about patches. How does it know? How does it? It says it's time released. How do you know if you've got a wonky one which suddenly throws out a bit more? And something I watched in the Panorama programme was actually that some specialists are prescribing more than the kind of upper limit because women aren't responding to them. But what they're not doing is they're not increasing the level of progestogen, which is actually stopping the thickening of the lining of the womb. So Rosemary said it worked for her until the illness problem started, and progestogen irritates the bladder. Well, that's not great. Anne's taking tablets and using patches, but can't really tell any difference. I think there's different brands as well you can have. I mean, I'd say if you can't really tell any difference, then do you still want to be on them? That's a discussion with the GP, obviously. Rosemary's sister found it helpful, but had to come off it because of migraines. And well, that's the thing that stops me, because I think to myself, well, side effects. You take one thing, it has a side effect. Robin says, in the late 90s, early 2000s, I took HRT 3 times, and a few years later, I had developed gallstones and had to have my gallbladder out. I'd read that HRT can cause gallstones. Well, I've got a gallstone, and I've never had HRT. I think, to be honest, that's an interesting one. Would you have had? I haven't, in my reading, I haven't heard about gallstones. But it's interesting what can contribute. What was better? I mean, when you say 3 times, do you mean three long periods of time? Or Fran says, I didn't get HRT. My hormone levels were not really depleted in the end. I didn't take anything. And that's it. I think with me, I'll probably spend so long thinking about what I could or should be doing that I'll be postmenopausal and time will have moved on. And that might not be such a bad thing. I mean, especially at the moment, I'm giving Milo his, he's got his tablet for thyroidism. He's got his steroid tablet. I've got Blue on vitamin B12. If I get me on a pill as well, I could end up mixing them all up, end up getting all beefy with the steroid. Oh, you took 3 pills, Robin. I would think that might be fine on the whole. But again, who knows? I am no, what's the word? Pharmaceutical expert. I'm not a medical professional and I'm not a pharmaceutical expert. I think that there was a lot of talk about how that study completely damaged the treatments that were being offered to women around that fair, and then they've actually looked at it, and I think some of the study was based on a lot older people, or a lot older than those that would have been taking it, and so they were getting negative impacts from it. So it didn't actually, the study wasn't done on the people that you would want to study. A bit like I was reading yesterday about the RSV vaccine, which is an upper respiratory tract infection, and that they give vaccines up to the age of 80. And then they don't do it after that because they don't have any real trial data after that. Because actually the over 80s are more cautious about going on a trial. for obvious reasons. So it's where's the chicken, where's the egg? I did see when I was searching there was people looking for women on healthy women going through the menopause not using HRT. So there are studies being done. And no doubt in another 50 years, think about what progress will have been made. But it's not just all about medical treatment. So one of the things to do is obviously avoid what triggers your hot flushes. So it could be spicy food, caffeine, alcohol. The dreaded E word. Exercise. Good nutrition. Look at your lifestyle, which is your exercise, your nutrition, your work. The role of stress and how that impacts anything. So if you're irritable and you're really stressed, well, that's going to really kick things off, isn't it? So your job, is that making things worse or vice versa? You can do strength training to help against osteoporosis. You can look at vitamins and supplements. There's a lot of menopause now has really hit the market. This is something else that they were looking at. But a lot of it is the claims that they're making, they're not proven. So you can spend a lot of money and really it's all could be placebo or you're getting a minimal effect. So again, if you're going to look into getting any expensive treatments outside of, then do your research. Is there anything really backing up their claims? You can, if you're having hot flashes, obviously the easiest one is wear layers so you can strip off quickly. But I think one of the other things is all about the emotional support. So there are menopause cafes, there's Facebook groups. But speak to your family and friends. Speak to your other halves, your children, your wider family. Let's break the taboo around talking about the menopause. And if you're really struggling, seek medical advice. Because there's no need to suffer in silence. See what options there are available to you. And Rosemary's saying, I think we all have to find our way through it, facing whatever hits us. Her friends, especially those who've been through it, recognised it in me and were very helpful. I think that's it. It's actually finding yourself. Some other people are going through it at the same time. And you can share your experiences. Do some reading. So you know that actually you're not on your own. And if you are feeling really down, then that's really when you need to reach out. Cold shoulder clothes were a menopausal godsend. You can get clothes that apparently, different types of clothes that can we use. You can have little cold bags or something like that. Dawn says she's sure menopause is a major contributing factor to why her spine has broken, a quick severe onset of osteoporosis. And that's something that, absolutely. Will this be in 50 years? They'll be all over it. Making sure your calcium levels are up. And we'll never know. The point is, there was on the program, there was a lady who was a cancer survivor. She'd had a hysterectomy and she was prescribed over the level amount of estrogen without the backup progestogen. And she started pelvic bleeding and she's now got, return of some cancer, obviously, which is shocking. So would that have happened if she hadn't have had that over level of HRT? Who knows? So that's why there is no one size fits all. Some people's lives will be completely impacted by the menopause, and HRT will be an absolute godsend. For others, they might be fabulous for some, HRT won't work, and that they've got limited options on what they can do. So that's good, Rosemary. Rosemary's helping her younger friends now. And I think that's important, and I think that's why it's so important to share our stories. And I think for me, it's about making sure that my niece has access to information that I didn't, because I didn't really fully understand. So when we're talking about sex education, we're talking about periods and reproduction. Why are we not talking about the next stage? Because that impacts 50% of the population. And even if we're not suffering ourselves, we may know people who do. And the other reason why I did say that, you know, my chat was open to men as well, because I think it's really important for them to know. So this isn't just something that actually should be just discussed by women. This is something that we should be talking about with everybody. In the same way that we're trying to raise awareness of so many different things, like, you know, Wendy, obviously you mentioned prostate cancer. We're now trying to raise awareness of the signs and symptoms of prostate cancer, breast cancer. We should be able now to talk about the menopause in a way that is supportive, and remove that stigma, because you're going to have to go through it. The extent of how it impacts you will change. I think the whole trans agenda is a really interesting one. And I think that's something that, again, will probably need even more kind of thought put into that, so that people are getting the support that they need and the access, and so you're able to talk about it and get that support. Stigma surrounds mental health, absolutely. But I think, you know, if I think back to being a, you know, young girl, teenager, mental health wasn't spoken about at all. Not at all. Now it is widely. At work, it's about emotional well-being, people taking mental health days. There's all that understanding now, but the menopause, no. Now we've got World Menopause Day. And there's maybe workplace discussions going on now, but actually it needs to be something that perhaps is there's a greater level of understanding. And I won't pretend that it's a complex beast. And my understanding will be of how I am impacted and how people I know are impacted, but other people can be completely different. So the best thing you can do is actually listen and learn more and then share. Has anybody else got any more stories that they want to share? Chat's not coming through at the moment, or either that, or you're not actually typing. So much better about mental health. Andrew says, I go to a mental health support group weekly. It's very helpful. We talk about our physical health as well. That's good. And I think actually with social media and having those different groups, specialist groups now are, you know, a great thing. Menopause warriors, for example. And yeah, for those women for whom their periods cause big problems. Yeah. Again, I had a friend and she went to a meeting and she rang me on a mobile and said, I can't leave the room, because she'd suddenly had an absolute flood and the chair was ruined. And she was absolutely sobbing in distraught because it's so embarrassing. And there isn't, you know, how embarrassing to have the conversation with your boss. I had another friend who was playing tennis and suddenly whoosh, all over her whites. But But why are we so embarrassed by this? Why? It's absolutely natural. Ah, hi, lethargy. We're literally in the final 5 minutes of the tour, but you can, of course, scroll back. Linda said while she was still working, the school psychologist and social worker used to do a great push in lessons about mental health in the classrooms. Children seem more open talking about their emotions. Yes, because it's not frowned upon now, whereas it really was, I think. Wendy says, I do think there's been progress in some areas. Nothing at all was mentioned about the reproductive cycle when I was young. Back with the dinosaurs, eh, Wendy? But yeah, now talk openly to your granddaughters. And that's really interesting, Tina, about the ocular migraines, because I Googled, is it down to the menopause? And I think it probably is hormonal, because they only started 2 years ago. And it was really spooky. I'd been to see my friend, and she'd spoken about the fact that she was having these, strange migraines. And I was like, oh no, I've never had one. Literally within 2 weeks, I had an ocular migraine. I thought, well, that's really strange. It's like she talked me into having one. I've had less than 5. That's the number. I'm guessing a tour's just finished, because we've got quite a few people suddenly joining us, it looks like, and I'm afraid to say that you've missed the main part of the tour. We've only got 3 minutes left. So Linda, no, ocular migraines aren't necessarily due to stress. Migraines could be due to stress, but actually it can be due to hormonal fluctuations. I think so much can be due to hormones. And I said, it's a Sunday. What have I got to be stressed about? I think if it was down to stress, I'd be having one a week. So yeah, I think I've maybe had 3 or 4 now. Very strange. A former colleague thought she had menopause, went to the GP, and had a baby a year later. Her menopause is now going to school. That's very cute. So yeah, Laura, yes, the tour is always left on. I would appreciate, obviously, even if people aren't watching live, it's always lovely if you can send across a little appreciation. And I should say, as most of you I think know, virtual tour guides are not paid. We rely on the generosity of your tips. The links to my Buy Me a Coffee and my PayPal are in the body of the pinned to YouTube. Laurie says she has 2 visual migraines, turns into bright mosaics and spins. Never thought of being hormonal. Yeah, I had little jaggedy ones. Yeah, I mean, I certainly didn't want to be driving while I had one. I had lots of zigzags on that eye. This eye was less so. You can just have it in one eye, but if I looked up. So yeah, it's lovely to see you all. Sorry you missed it. We've had a lovely chat. But hopefully I'll see you all as well on Thursday, when I'm going to be walking around Rye in the dark, talking about the spooky tales of Rye, and then sharing Dr. Sin's bedchamber with you. I hope you found the tour useful and interesting. I mean, some of the information I've shared with you is just really, when you think about what women had to go through in the past, it's truly shocking. So if you think that maybe, all those years ago, would we have been accused of being a witch and burnt at the stake? Would we have been operated on in the Victorian times? So thank you all for sharing and taking part in this. It's been lovely. And And as I say, I hope you've found it interesting. I hope you found it helpful. And the thing to do is don't be scared of the menopause, because you can, if you think about how many billions of women have gone through it and continue to go through it, and you will find your own way through it. It's a personal experience. It's just the next stage of our life journey. And then we can look forward to the next stage. So thank you all for coming. Thank you all for being you. And thank you if you were able to send me a tip. Much appreciated. Take care, lovelies. Bye-bye.